In this video, we're going to talk about how to improve information flow in an organization. And I'm going to talk about the 4 key steps to flow and the 11th commandment when it comes to flow and systems thinking. So let's get started. Typically in organizations, this is what happens. And I've spoken about this a little bit before, but I'm going to really dig in this time. In an organization, typically when you have departments, what you'll have is siloed efficiency, meaning that that department will attempt to be resource efficient in and of itself. So when you look at these different silos, they really only start to care about what's important for their department so that they look good. And Nicholas Modig was drawing this for me one time, and he said every little department ends up having kings and queens, right? And once you have kings and queens, they have their own siloed islands. What happens when you have kings and queens on siloed islands? What you have now you have resource wars, trade wars, you have wars altogether, and you have disconnected and inefficient communication systems because everyone becomes their own little kingdom. And what happens is that becomes team number one. So even if those kings and queens, metaphorically, in a company come together in a leadership team meeting, they come representing their own departments like members of Congress, politicking for resources. They don't come together as a flow efficient organization and as a true cohesive leadership team. Because if you have the department heads, that should be team one, and then the individual department should be team two. Priority, second priority. Now, in case you think that's mean or grumpy or disrespectful, I will say that the departments will be happier if they know that the overall leadership structure is cohesive and you're not pulling and fighting, right? So if you do not have a flow efficient organization, and if you do not have flow amongst your communication systems or even your purpose or the flow unit in your organization, if you don't have organizational flow efficiency, then each department acts like its own kingdom with its own kings and queens, with its own islands, politicking for resources. It moves the company in different directions, and it's quite destructive. So what we need to do is first and foremost create clarity, know what we're attempting to do, and know what needs to flow in our organization, which most of the time is the product, but also the communication surrounding that product. So instead of seeing vertically optimized, sub-optimized, I will say, organizations, we want to see flow efficiency, and we want to see optimizing the whole and see that flow of communication and the flow of the product moving horizontally through the departments. So this is the basic concept that I want to explain, and then I'm going to talk about now. And so there's 4 key steps identifying and maintaining that flow. But I want to give you a really cool commandment, which I will paraphrase. The 11th commandment in lean, flow, and systems thinking is thou shalt not distort, hinder, or withhold communication in any systems or anywhere in the organization. One of the comments that is an outgrowth of that is that you can really muck up systems, especially complex systems, because companies are complex systems, if you distort or withhold communication. If you want things to flow, communication must flow as well. So of all the commandments, and this is kind of a play on the 10 commandments in the Bible, but the 11th commandment is thou shalt not withhold, distort, or muddy up any of the communication systems in any organization. And so they must flow. There must not be any walls. There must not be any silos. We must be looking at creating value for the customer through the departments, not vertically sub-optimized within them. And so here are some really key bits of advice as you do this. So first and foremost, understand your clarity, understand what you're attempting to do, who your customer is, and understand what your flow unit, what needs to flow to the customer to add that value. Number 2, once you know what your flow unit is or what that value is, measure the right things, right? If you're measuring individual efficiency for a piece of equipment or a department or an individual group, and you want them to be under budget, you're incentivizing them to silo. Don't measure something vertically that's sub-optimized. Measure the flow of the product from the beginning to the end, or measure the responsiveness to the customer, or measure how well the flow unit or the product the value receiving unit in your organization, or in construction, the value adding unit, the crews, measure how well they're flowing, right? If you measure the right things, then you can actually have a good output and have the right outcomes. One time somebody told me, I can tell you how your people will behave in an organization based on what you measure. Because whatever you're measuring and holding them accountable to is what they'll do. So if you say, hey, I'm holding you accountable to your department budget, your department budget will be the one thing that's optimized. Or I'm going to measure you based on whether or not you're the best department. Well, then that department's going to suck in all the resources and be suboptimized. But if you're like, I'm going to measure all departments based on how well we're serving the clients, then you can measure the right things and get the right things accomplished. Number 3, we've got to stop measuring groups, silos, and busyness, right? I don't care how much a person or a piece of equipment or a department, how hard they're working. I don't even care how many hours they're here. It just doesn't matter. I need to see what's flowing, right? If it's a hospital, it's the patient. If it's a car manufacturing plant, it's the car. In construction, it's the crew adding value to the zones, right? What is the flow unit? And is that moving? Don't pay too much attention in the first place to the things happening around the flow unit. Find what the flow unit is, right? And then once you find it, make sure that everything is adding value so it can flow optimally, right? So stop looking at just the resources around what's flowing. Look at the flow unit itself. And again, make sure that those measurements are measuring how well that flow unit is moving forward to add value to that customer. Once you know what that flow unit is and you're attempting to really optimize that, using lean methodologies, get it to flow faster and reduce friction. And use your leadership team to really make sure that that flow unit is flowing and make sure you're making improvements as you go. Now, as you go from department to department or functional area to functional area, from a product's or a service's inception to the customer, you want the product to flow or the service to flow. You cannot get that product or that service to flow any faster than your communication flows. And so between departments, your communication must flow. You must have the right communication systems. You must have the right proximity. You must have the right trust. You must have the right organization. You must be able to quickly share communication. There must be as little bureaucracy as possible. You must have the right vision so that as people are communicating, they're making the right decisions. So communication will always go with your product. So it would be like asking what's most important. Is it the product or the communication? That would be like asking what's more important, the plane being on time or the people inside the plane? Well, they go together. The people aren't making it anywhere without the plane, right? And so whether you're focused on the people or the plane, they both got to get to the same place at the same time. That's the same way your product or your service works with communication. If you want your people to go faster on your plane, speed up your plane, right? If you want your product or your service to go to the end of the line and add value to your customer, then speed up the efficiency and the effectiveness of your communication, the feedback loops, and the ability for the teams to improve where they work at the place of work. And like I said, always increase proximity. It would be just like, and I love this systems thinking analogy. Have you ever turned on at a hotel the hot water and then 5 minutes later it's too hot and then you turn it down, now it's too cold? Like the feedback loop, the delay is the problem. And so if you can get your product flowing to the customer with flow efficiency, not siloed efficiency, and you actually have teams working together with proximity, right? You need to reduce the feedback loops, meaning somebody says, well, there's a problem from the handoff here to here. Well, let's fix it now. Don't have it so disconnected that the problem never gets fixed. Proximity, connectedness, and reducing the delays and feedback loops will always help your communication and your product or your service. And you know, the other thing that will reduce the delay and increase our proximity is subscribing to this channel. So go ahead and do that right now. But the bottom line is, if you really want to increase the communication or the effectiveness of your communication in an organization, look at it from a flow efficient standpoint. Always remember the customer. Look at what's flowing. Make sure everything is heading in the direction of optimizing that. Make sure that your communication is supporting that flow. And make sure that your communication enables people, boots on the ground, to have shorter feedback loops and to make improvements quicker. Now, I'm going to give you a link in the description below to the book, This is Lean by Nicholas Modig. You're going to love it. you're going to immediately see how the concept of flow efficiency and lean will improve your communications and your product or service. And you're going to get a new mindset. You're probably like, hey, Jason, this isn't very specific. You're going to get a new mindset where immediately you'll be able to translate that to specifics within your organization and have massive and amazing results. So I hope you enjoy the book. I know you're going to love this. And reach out if you have any questions. Remember, we are never sub-optimizing within departments. We're always optimizing the flow of our product and the communication to the customer in a value chain that gets it to them in the shortest amount of time with the best quality at the lowest overall total cost. On we go.